Welcome to the conversation today. You just said you're going to have a conversation with me, and I think that's exactly what this is going to be. And this has parallels to the coaching space because, very honestly, I haven't prepared any questions, and you haven't prepared the answers. So whatever emerges in the moment. So that's how this podcast is going to be. And welcome to the show. Welcome to this. This is the 48th episode of the People, Passion, and Purpose podcast. It does feel fantastic every time I do a +1 on this and put the numbers in. And I think one thing that I wanted to sort of start off with before I do your introduction is that the conversations with you have always been authentic, genuine, very warm. So I felt like, this elder sisterly vibe when somebody new has come into the space. That very warm embrace that comes and puts you at home at all places. I think I've felt that with you, and I thought, okay, it would be a fantastic space to invite you and share your story to the rest of the world, and that's how we are here.
Thank you, Sunil, and honestly, and thank you for your kind words as well, right? So I am looking forward to being here, having this conversation with you. So thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, yeah, I think, if I had to share an introduction with Rachel, and I'd leave her also to share some more. So, she's worked in the IT, then jumped into coaching, is completed her PCC, and is on the path of mastery in terms of working towards the MCC, has completed her team coaching ACTC certification, and is an NLP master practitioner. And there are a lot of master practitioners. If you look at her LinkedIn profile, there are a lot of things with mastery in it. So, that's the introduction in terms of her as a coach. But I'd leave her to introduce herself as a person.
Okay, so so that's a good question, I think, because we are so used to introducing ourselves as professionals, and I'm this and I'm that. But I think at my core, I am a very I think I'm just a human being. I think that's who I am. Um, I think I have my pluses, I have my minuses, I have some things that are really good about me. There are things that are extremely irritating about me as well. So I think today, after all these years of being who I am, I think I am at that place in my life today where I think I accept, I acknowledge, and I respect myself for all parts of me, the good and the bad. And and I think that's what I also see with everybody else. We're all good and we're all bad, and there's the yin and the yang, and that's what makes us who we are, right? And I think it's about honoring all parts. So yeah, that's who I am.
Wow. So a very complicated answer as well as a very simple answer. Both at the same time. So you're a human, you accepted and acknowledged all parts of who you are. And I was just observing, the painting in the background, the books in the background. So are they passions of yours? Do you paint? Do you also read?
Oh yes, I think and thank you for bringing attention to that. I never saw it that way. That stuff in my background is a big representation of me. Yes, so yeah, I paint. I don't know if I really identify as an artist, but I have been painting pretty much my entire life.
Mhm.
It is something that is extremely relaxing for me. It's a part of who my way of expressing myself also, and so I do a lot of oil. Now I don't do oil as much. I used to do oil painting. Now I do more of acrylic. I do a little bit of watercolors. So yes, that's a passion. The other passion is definitely books. I'm constantly reading, and a lot of people think that if you're a coach, you're only reading like very serious self-help books, which is not true. I read everything from history to fantasy to sci-fi, all of that, right? So I do a lot of fiction reading. I think I'm on multiple fiction book clubs. I also, of
Wow.
course, I read books around self-help and personal development, a lot around performance psychology. I think that's a deep area of interest as well. But yes, voracious reader.
Wow. So I think at least in terms of fiction, that puts us in the same club. I I think I've never found it as intriguing, as interesting as fiction. So nothing stranger than fiction, and so it's always a joy to read fiction. And I am turning pages and saying what's going to happen. Not so much in terms of self-helps, so it becomes a boring read after 4 or 5 pages. So what's the secret of staying beyond the first five, if you have to give me something?
I'm guessing you're asking about the self-help and the
Self-help, not fiction.
non-fiction books, yeah? Yeah, I think it's the way I read a lot of that stuff, right? So when it's fiction, I'm just following the story, taking with the authors, going wherever the author wants me to go, and just being with the characters and finding associations with the character. But when it's non-fiction, I think I change the lens that I read with. Right. Now, there are some books that I read which are pertinent to my work, where I'm thinking in terms of, so there the lens that I read through is, how is this relevant to the work that I do, and what from this can I put into use in my coaching? And which means that there are certain chapters where I read a few paragraphs and I say, okay, I don't need this. And there is some stuff where I would read the same chapter 4 times just to really, get to the depth of it. Or I might take, stuff from a chapter and then try and find another book or stuff online that would be relevant to my work, right? So it's the lens that I'm using. And then, there could also be books that I'm reading for my own development. So one could be work, then it could be me working on myself, right? So stuff like that. Again, the lens is, how do I use it? So, and my experience with all nonfiction books is that uh, you don't need to probably read the entire book. You need to read what's useful to you, take what's useful. And I think that's largely the intent of a lot of authors, take what's useful. You don't need to take everything. Also, honestly, I feel a lot of the non-fiction books, some of them should be just pamphlets. Sometimes they're just dragged out into books. What could be like a 10-page thing is like a 200-page thing. And so sometimes it's also about filtering out what's useful. And that's my secret. Yeah.
Absolutely, because I'd read Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and the first chapter I knew what this person was talking about. The second, it's almost the same. Third is almost the same. There are different stories of the same theme, and midway I was like, is the entire book going to be the same? And I have a problem that if I start a book, I have to close. So I had to go through the entire ordeal and close that book and say, okay, bye.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's definitely a book that should have been a pamphlet.
Oh, yes. So I also, like observed the timepiece in the background, and that also was it took me back to, once upon a time when I was still using watches. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because it reminded me of my childhood and all the alarms that we used to keep, such that before phones, life before phones. So what's been your most favorite, most intriguing experience life before phones?
Oh, life before phones. I think I think life before phones was and sometimes when I talk about this, I also realize that maybe I'm really old now, because yeah, when I see my son or some of the younger kids, I don't think they've ever seen life without phones. Even if they're not using phones, they've always seen phones around, I think. And I grew up in a time where we didn't even have a landline. So like absolutely no phones. I think life before phones was, there was value in it from the point of view that uh, you were not constantly hankering around knowing everything in every moment, right? Like now, anybody that you need to talk to, you can message them, you can check in with them at any given point of it. And there's a plus to it, and then there's a minus to it, because you are so constantly in need of knowing.
Absolutely, yeah.
you have to know, like if you ordered something on, whatever, Swiggy, you need to know every 2 minutes, how far is my order, right? So, so I think phones have kind of, while they do bring people together, they also take people away. They also take, feed into this unnecessary need of always knowing.
Oh, yeah.
And, take away from, sometimes there's also value in just allowing and trusting everything's fine, right? But we need to know at all points. And I think that's
Oh, yeah.
something that I don't like about the phones, and that's what I probably miss about the time before phones.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that not knowing is one another, but I think even knowing itself was a journey. Knowing itself was a ordeal. So even if I had to, like right now, Google search is just a fingertip away.
Yeah.
And if I had to then find out something, I think I had to find the library, I had to go to visit like 6 or 7 books, then possibly, talk to somebody about who knew something more, and then get to that. And also message is instantly delivered. So I am almost expecting 100% response in less than a minute. And if that's not there, it just doesn't work out. So my mom's a kindergarten teacher, so I keep saying to her, saying as soon as you retire, I think you should also switch off the kindergarten aspect, because sometimes she asks something and the next minute, if it's not done, she's like, "Oh, why haven't you done it?" So I'm like, you're not in mother mode, you're in kindergarten mode.
Yeah.
You need stuff answered instantly. So yeah, so and also I think my podcast not complete without asking things around how is it growing up. So that's where the channeling around say mobile life without phones. So how is it growing up? What was your most interesting, most funny experience?
So that's so there are not too many people who know this about me, but I actually grew up in Kashmir,
Hmm.
right? So I was born in Kashmir. My family was settled there, and so my childhood was like right in the lap of nature.
Wow.
So
Hmm.
we used to live on so our house was on a hill. At one, so it was for people who've been to Kashmir would know that there's a temple called Shankaracharya. So our house was on the same hill that that temple is on, and just like a 10 minutes walk from my house used to be the Jhelum River. Another 20 minutes walk the other round, other way used to be the Dal Lake, right? So I was constantly surrounded with this beautiful, nature that honestly I took for granted, because, when you've always had it, you don't really know what you have, right? And because, back then it was also a place where there was no industry, so because of environmental reasons, they would not allow industry, heavy industry. So there was no pollution. So the air was like unbelievably fresh, right? The food was always good, right? And easy access to Kashmir is known for fruit and, all of that. It was only after, for my studies, when I moved out, is when I realized, what I was really living to. Uh, but there's also, other sides to the journey, right? So when I was in fifth or sixth is when, the insurgency in Kashmir started. So
Mm.
life suddenly went like, 180 degree to the other side, where, from being constantly able to do whatever we could, it was suddenly, there's always a curfew, there's always something, there's
Mm.
always military around, there's always people walking around with guns, and, so I've seen that transition from, absolute calm and peace to absolute terror and chaos. I was, I think, in fifth grade when that happened. Yeah, so that's but even in all of that, I think, the one thing that I grew up with, because I grew up in a place like that, is I think, and I know you asked me to tell you a fun fun thing, but I'm not sure this is fun. But I think one thing I grew up with always was the resilience of the human spirit. When things are good, we are resilient. When things are not good, also human spirit is resilient. Um, so I think that was a lesson that's really ingrained in me as a child. Yeah, sorry, I don't think I answered the fun part of it.
So you
Yeah,
you
but I
still
think
have.
I'll answer that also. I think fun as a child for me. So, and this was a real recent realization. I was in one of these workshops, and I realized, so one of the most fun things is that I used to do as a child is I used to love playing with in mud. And recently I realized this, that so I have like a mini garden in my balcony, and I kind of I'm always, and I'm not very good with plants, honestly, right? So And I recently had this realization that I don't really care about the plants, honestly. I think I just like playing with the mud. So I'm still that person.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I think gardening and playing with mud is something that yeah, I think there's a lot of commonalities, but maybe I'd like to somewhere put myself as a good nurturer as well as part of this. So all plants that I had put in my previous garden actually were giving fruits and were good good plants.
Yeah. So I will not claim that in any way, right? I take care of the plants, they don't necessarily thrive.
And I loved going to the garden. My granny had a garden, and used to love going there, cleaning, composting, and like general favorite pastime. If afternoons are boring, is watch the ants,
Hmm.
and that was the favorite pastime. I don't know if it's a favorite, but it's bored. Like if I was really bored, that was the best thing that I did. And time would go, and suddenly somebody would call, and play would begin, and that was the end of it. But that was a good space
Yeah, and
watching the
when
ants
you're
there.
saying ants, Sunil, I'm just recalling when my son was really small. He was maybe 1.5 years old. And I remember we went to, the garden to play, and there was this whole line of very tiny black ants going ahead.
Mhm.
And I still recall his fascination with the ant and what is this tiny thing that's moving. And,
Mhm.
it's I think children are fascinating with what they teach us, right? The fascination with an ant, so something that you wouldn't
Oh,
like. I wouldn't even probably turn around and give a second glance to. And there was so much fascination with something that's just there. So I think I that just what you told me about the ants just took me back to that moment, because I was like absolutely blown away that somebody can be so impressed with an ant.
oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think the more you learn about ants, I think there's lot more to be impressed with in terms of this. And for me, my love for ecology actually started with these observations. And yeah, they also had a jackfruit tree, and the jackfruit didn't give us any fruits, I think, until we moved out of the house. It's only when we moved out of the house, it gave a bumper crap, and we were not there to taste any of the fruits of our liver. So that like generally nature teaches you a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think thinking of nature, I think I also saw that where I got my information was 15 days of journaling with Rachel. So those places, I think a lot of tidbits came into place. You're trekking to this rock place of 1,200 years rocks, and your fascination around fitness, and your two things that didn't happen in 2023, your fitness goals and MCC. All those came into picture. So fitness is also a passion of yours.
It is. It is. So I think fitness is a passion from the point of view that, a lot of times, you know, so I like to be extremely active.
Mm.
If I'm not active, like for a couple of days, so if I've not worked out or if I've not done anything that's around physical activity for a couple of days, I think my body's so used to it, I start feeling uncomfortable. I like to be active, right? Now, a lot of people kind of equate being fit with being thin. I don't, because my goal is also always fitness, not thinness.
Mm.
Um, and so and for me, the measure of that is my endurance. What is the level of how much what is the extent of activity I can do. And I think that's extremely important. I think for me, if I'm physically fit, I also feel that I'm able to you know do more. I feel more, like things are flowing. So for me, I think physical activity is an extremely important part of being who I am. So yeah.
Wonderful. So what was the sport that you enjoyed playing when you were when you are when you were young, when you are young?
Nothing, honestly. So I wasn't a sports person at all. I took up fitness. I think I was an extremely lazy kid, a lazy teenager, a lazy
Mhm.
youngster. I think fitness for me started happening only after like maybe in my late 20s or early 30s. And it just started with like a couple of rounds of the building of walk and built from there. And I remember the first couple of days that I went, I did like 2 rounds around the building for like, must have taken less than 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, I'm tired. Right? And that's when I realized, okay, does not seem to be right. Um, but so I do a lot, I don't still really play any sport. But I do a lot of walking. I do a lot of strength training. I do a little bit of yoga. So I kind of mix it up with these.
Oh, wonderful. I don't do much of yoga, but walking is something that I enjoy, and not walking in a park. I think the park is not my favorite place to walk. It's something like in nature, in a market. So anywhere and everywhere there are people.
Mm.
So, talking of people, how did this fascination of working with people, transforming their journeys happen?
Yeah, I think honestly, it happened. It happened very organically for me. Early part of my career. So I started as an engineer. I was working in technology. I worked in technology for a good 14 years. Um, but I think, there are certain parts of you that you discover as you grow in life, right? So at some point in my corporate career, I had started managing teams, right? And I have now, and there's a little bit of a backstory that, I was not the first, but the second person in my family. My sister was the first to get into a corporate job. Right? So nobody in my family had worked in a big company. And while I was extremely ambitious and hardworking, a lot of it was figuring out how to survive in that environment, right? How do you grow? Like didn't seem to be like any clear guideline of how to be and what to do and stuff, right? So one of the things that I always used to think was that when I become a manager, I'm always going to make sure my team has
Mhm.
a clear path. So, and I think I very diligently followed that. So the moment I became a team lead, my team would always have like career plans, performance goals, regular one-on-ones, and and I think I used to take a lot of pride in growing people in my teams. And somewhere along the way, I realized how good I used to feel when somebody would get promoted, or somebody would get something good happen to them in their career. And if I had even in some way motivated them or inspired them, it used to feel like you know very fulfilling. So that's where my interest in performance and helping people grow started. I did not even know back then that there's a concept of coaching or there's any such profession. And I don't think back then, and we're talking like 2010, in India, it wasn't a thing.
Not so popular, yeah.
And then I think because I was, and the second part about me is that I'm a learner. I love learning. I'm constantly learning. So even in my corporate job, I would put aside a certain budget or percentage of my earning for my self-development. So every year I would do a certification, I would do something. And it so happened that one of the years, the organization that I used to work in, we had a European uh, part of the business as well. And they used to have coaching. So they used to have an internal community of the employees, right? And this group used to kind of meet once a month to talk about different, and coaching itself was a very fairly new industry back then. So I just found them on the web intranet, and then I got onto a couple of their calls, and I found it very interesting. And that's how I came to know there's something called coaching, there's something called NLP. And then I looked around in India, nobody was training. So then I had to, I searched, and then I found there was this company called Coach You Australia, which used to conduct classes once a year in some part of Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because it was meant to be, or the universe wanted it to happen, that year they were doing it in Bangalore, and just like 3 months from the time that I looked them up. And so I said, okay, this year I still have my learning budget that I haven't spent. So I just put that money into that. And it was a 8-day training followed by, I think we had 2 or 3 phone calls. Back then, there was no concept of Zoom and, video calls.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those 8 days kind of transformed a lot for me. And suddenly it became very clear that this is who I'm supposed to be. And then again, I continued. I was still working in my corporate role and stuff like that. But I think around 2014, it just felt right to do this full time. So I just quit. Around that time, also got my PCC. And then since then, this is what I've been doing.
So almost a 10-year tenure as a coach.
Longer, actually, maybe around 13 years or so, because the journey actually for me, my coaching journey started almost in 2010, 11.
Wow. I am really, just making an underlining statement here, saying you had a budget for your own learning, and
I still do. I
yeah.
still do. Whatever I earn, I put aside 10% of whatever I've earned in the year for my self-development.
Okay.
Because my one belief, and especially after I've become a coach, my one belief is that I am, I can only take my client to the extent of who I am as a coach. So the
Mhm.
deeper I am able to go, the deeper I'm able to take the client. So I call, and I enjoy learning. There's also that part.
Yes, yes, yes. I think that is an amazing concept to have, because something that I hopefully, can start emulating that. But I think I'm really impressed with that very strong focus on learning and keeping continuously improving. I think that is a default when it comes to the tech space. You have to constantly reinvent, reignite some of your old passions and get them into aspects, because when I entered coaching, I had no idea what coaching was. So for me, it was like a baby learning to swim in the ocean directly, not even in the swimming pool. And it was and it continues to be a very interesting experience. So how is it in terms of, how's the entrepreneur beginning journey? Because I am very interested in the first 3 or 4 years, the first 1,000 days.
Um, honestly, it was so when I decided that I'm going to quit my job, I was very clear that this is what I want to do. What was not clear was how will I do it. I just had this very deep conviction in my heart that I'll figure it out. Right. Again, I don't come from like a business family, or I don't like, while I was a business leader in the corporate, but running your own thing is a
Mhm.
completely different ballgame, right? So I stepped out and I said, okay, this is who I'm going to be. I put some thought into how do I want to, position myself and all of that. And that's when I realized that I had been working in the same organization for almost 10 years, which meant that my network was limited to that
Mhm.
one organization, right? And also because, I don't come from an HR background, I hardly knew anybody in HR, L&D. I mean, I hardly knew anybody outside the organization, but I hardly also had too much of a network. So I'm like, okay, so now I want to be this coach, but who's going to hire me? Yeah, and there were moments of self-doubt for sure, right? At least in the first couple of years, I had these very frequent moments of did I, but the good part was for me, I think, was every time I asked myself, uh, should I not be doing it? The answer was I should totally be doing this. So there was also this very deep belief, and I don't know where it came from, but a very, very deep conviction that what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing. Um, in fact, one of the targets I had set for myself is that in 2 years, if I don't establish myself as a coach, I will go back to a corporate job.
Mhm.
And but yeah, obviously that didn't happen. So,
This is this is thankfully one of the goals that worked out for you in enabling this conversation to happen.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So this, I think this conviction, and again, like I said, I'm not sure why the conviction was there, but it was there that this is who I'm supposed to be. I'll figure this out, even if I've not done it before. And yeah, but it's also, the entrepreneur's journey, whether you're doing something like I'm doing or you're starting any business, there is always going to be this thing of, will it work out? Right?
Mm.
But the only antidote to that is put one foot in front of the other and keep walking. Right? Because there's always going to be people who will tell you that, why are you doing this? Why did you leave such a cushy job for this? There'll always be people who'll say that, this is not the right thing for the market. Oh, why don't you do it this way and all of that. But the thing to realize is a lot of people, however helpful they might want to be, they're coming from their own experiences of life and their own set of beliefs. Right. So you need to be very clear on what is your belief about yourself, what is your belief about the work that you're doing, and lead from that. Right. And one of the things, the two things that I feel when I look back now that really helped me in those days. One is, I think I am extremely passionate about this work. So I think every time I spoke to anybody, the passion that I truly had, and I don't think that's something that you can fake, right? Because I really, really believe in the work that I do. And of course, now after so many years, I have a lot of, proof to say that it works. Back then, because it was early days, it was just pure passion I was running on. And I think that passion was very convincing for a lot of people, for them to believe in me. The other thing I think is my ability to persevere. I think I have a lot of grit. I can just, this thing I said of put one foot in front of the other, just keep believing and just keep walking. And eventually, the path gets easier. The doors start opening. You start seeing things that work out for you. So it's just that one connect, one client, one deal that needs to happen for you to really start believing in yourself. So, and that happens. It's just about being patient with yourself. Yeah. So that's I think that's how my first few 2 years were. A little up and down, a little bit of self-doubt, but keep walking, keep working at it, keep trying new things, also not getting stuck in, oh, I'll do it only this way. So you have to try a few different things and eventually you find your formula. Yeah. So that's how it was. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's I think an amazing space to have that core of belief with you saying, uh, I believe in this, and I'll see whatever happens, however it happens, it will happen, and yeah, put one step forward and keep moving. So yeah, I think that's I think a profound space. I just want to use the coaching methodology of letting that sink in and give that some silence. So what's been something that you enjoy about coaching? I know I'm asking for one thing, but there are multiple things.
What I enjoy about coaching, I think possibilities.
Mhm. Wow.
One word to it, right? I think, and what I mean by possibilities here is, I think as human beings, we are incredibly powerful. We are incredibly creative. We are incredibly resourceful. Uh, and I think coaching is what opens up all those possibilities for people. And
Mm.
to me, that is nothing short of magic. And that's the thrill I get out of this work. I believe people are so incredibly powerful, and most people are running at like 10% or 20% of their power. Right? Even if you double that, even if you're running at 40% or 50% of your power, it just changes your life. It changes life not just for yourself, it changes life for people around you. So to me, coaching is about what's possible. What is this one person capable of creating? And I have never in all of these years met a person who's not more powerful than they first thought they were.
I think I'm gonna cut this and put this into a reel. It is beautifully powerful because one of my core philosophies in life is the power of possibilities, the butterfly effect, because you like a small flutter somewhere can actually create a hurricane somewhere. So and in many places, one of the things that got me into coaching is also the power of possibilities. I don't know where this is taking me, but I feel that every other part of my body and my part of my existence is saying this is the place for you to be. And whatever happens wherever we go, and that's how it has happened. But I love the space that none of the people that have come to you have you know, had that space of understanding that they are more powerful when they move out of the coaching space than when they came in. And yeah.
And Sunil, I'll actually say there are sometimes people are aware that they are powerful, but sometimes people are also scared of their own power.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is also true.
Stepping into your power also takes courage.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think courage, vulnerability, um, question marks, confusions, all of it make it so exciting to be present when somebody is opening that chapter in front of you. And I bring that back to fiction. Every coaching conversation to me is turning the next page. And you don't know what's going to happen with each of the session, what's possible, what's not possible. what twists and turns will come in each of these formats. So we don't know. And I think maybe that's also an exciting factor on what makes coaching fascinating for me is the mystery, the thrill. So when I am with the client, I think one of my favorites is that my presence is with them 100% of the time. And I'm seeing it as a novel being written by the other side. And that's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a coach, do you have any questions?
And yeah, the question I'd have is what prompted you to do this? Because when you reached out to me, you spoke about the human behind the coach, right? So, and
Yes.
there are so many podcasts happening around coaching. So, what prompted you to take this approach?
I think one is that nobody is doing it like this. So I love to sort of be and operate in a space that's not there with everybody. And yeah, because even writing for me was of a similar space. I didn't know anybody who was writing. And automatically, my network across my college, across my organization was a big shift. And there's no competition in this space. So that's also one. More deeper and denser philosophical aspects is that this is coming from a space where I feel that coaching and being a coach is also like a hat that we wear. And most of the times when I have met people, I am meeting them with that hat on. But there are so many other things, so many other interesting tidbit stories that essentially make them who they are. And that is fascinating. And that's the storyteller and story writer in me is always curious about what got this person here rather than what this person is doing at this point, at this moment. And that journey, I think, is something that cannot be captured in a, say, written format. It has to have a longer format. So 35 to 40 minutes, get people enough warmed up, and some pearls of wisdom will come through, some stories will come through, and I think not just with coaches. Coaches happen to be one of the few sector of people that, or a few professions that have been featured on the podcast. So, but I am very fascinated by how humans are, what is that they're capable of. And then somewhere also the space that sometimes we don't even acknowledge little things for ourselves. And through a podcast, it happens. And it happens for you, it happens for me. And somewhere also it's a trigger for somebody else to say, I am very similar to this. If, say, Rachel or Sunil has done this, might as well do it myself. That's the deeper aspect of each of these podcast episodes.
No, I think that's beautiful. And it's so right, you know. Um, and from a coaching perspective, one of the things, and I'm sure you've heard this as well, you coach from who you are, right?
Correct.
So,
Absolutely.
while in coaching, you'll follow, you know, a way of coaching, or a coaching mindset, but still, at the end of the day, who you are is also there in the conversation, right? So, uh, and I think I hear you when you say that, acknowledging bits of us and what's made us who we are. And there's so many parts to that, right? But there are those small stories that really hold so much magic for each person. So
Oh,
it's a
yes.
beautiful way to acknowledge those. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes. That is little moments of joy. Sometimes the ice cream is far more the kulfi is far more interesting than a cornetto. So little moments of joy taken in between. So all those things actually do matter. Mm. And yeah, like it also puts the penchant for asking the right questions and the powerful questions from the ICF. So you asked the right right question to me at this point of time. Yeah. So and also I wanted to sort of just touch upon this space of your journey as a coach. So any space or any advice that you would like to give to somebody who's starting their coaching journey, like essentially newly.
Okay, so um, there are two parts to two things that I would say to anybody who's starting, right? Uh, First and foremost, don't expect it to be a quick and or maybe quick is not the word. I would say don't expect this to be a your learning to be a one-time thing.
Hmm.
Coaching is a journey and coaching is a practice. And practice is what takes you towards perfection, though you'll never arrive perfection in this profession, right? So, sometimes I've seen coaches who've done their, first level of training, whatever that might be, maybe 5 days, 6 days of training, and they've got their 65 hours of training, and they've got their maybe a few hundred, maybe 100 hours of, the initial thing. And they feel like, oh, we've put in a lot, now we've got there. But what I want to tell anybody who's starting out, see, I've been doing it for almost 13 or 14 years. And what I'm saying is nobody ever gets there. This is a profession where you have to constantly keep upping your skill, because the more you learn, the more there is to learn. So this is a great profession if you enjoy learning. But this is not a profession where one-time learning gets you anywhere. Right? So a lot of times, newer coaches also say, oh, clients don't, they do one session and they disappear and all of that. I can promise you, if the client gets value, they will come back.
They will come back. Yeah, absolutely.
I still have clients who've been with me for almost 10 years.
Wow.
Right? So it's not that they meet me every day, but when they need a coach, then they only come back to me, and they come back to me because there is value. Right? So,
Absolutely.
and every time the person comes back, they should get more value than when they met you a year back. Right? So that's an important thing. So keep learning, constantly keep learning. Never believe that you've got it all. You are only as good as your last session. Right? So that's one. The second thing I definitely want to say also is be patient with yourself. Right? Even in, building the business part of it. So there is the skill part of it and there is the business part of it, right? Even there, constantly keep working, trying new things. Don't, if one thing doesn't work, doesn't mean you're a failure. Try something different. Keep trying a few different things till you find what's the right space for you, because this is a vast space. There are many different ways that you can operate in this space, right? So figure out what's the formula that works for you. And for that, you will have to experiment. Nobody knows that on day one.